Hello. The Divine Code reading for January 18th, pages 440, 449 and 450. We're in the chapter, The Prohibition of Endangering oneself or another, and the obligation to save a person's life. Topic number 2. Likewise, if it is forbidden to give bad advice to a person that will cause him harm, as it says, Leviticus 19:14. Before a blind person, do not put a stumbling block. Meaning that if a person is blind in a certain matter, do not give him wrong advice in that area, which would cause him to be unwittingly damaged. Rabbi Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg notes that it is clear from the verse, before a blind person, do not put a stumbling block, does not constitute a Torah law prohibition upon Gentiles. As explained by Tosafot in Rima Eurodea 151 and Tractate of Vodazara, chapter 1, that one may sell an item used for idol worship to a Gentile if there is no suspicion that he will use it in this function, and this is permissible if it is known that he will sell it. It is even permissible if it is known that he will sell it to a third party who will surely use it for idol worship. In a comparative case for a Jew, it would be a prohibition of the original seller because of beware before the blind person, do not put a stumbling block. So, the verse in Leviticus is speaking specifically for the Jewish people, and there's different aspects to this. One is not allowing a person that's going to do something, not giving him the means to do it, but that's where he's already determined to do it. And the other one is to lead a person on a path. And that's also considered like putting a stumbling block before a blind person, but that's leading the person across a stumbling block, which is a different aspect of the same thing. So the first part that says not to give the person the means to do something they plan to do anyway, that is a prohibition with the Jews among themselves, one Jew to another. In the area of Gentile to Gentile, the aspect of prohibition would be not to lead a person over the stumbling block. On the other hand, it is possible that it is even forbidden for a Gentile to give another person bad advice. Because it can be considered stealing, since it can cause the person to suffer a loss. Now, it's kind of related. It's similar to theft, although the person, well, assuming that the person leading the person astray is gaining from the theft. Otherwise, I'm not really sure if you call that theft in a real sense, but in a philosophical, in a philosophical sense, it would be like stealing because it's causing the person grief. Misleading one to sin, however, does not constitute this prohibition, since one who is sinning is responsible for his own actions. This is explained by Ecclesiar and the Panavitcher Rav, Rabbi Shlomo Kahananem, Kahanaman. So the person is not stealing because he's not really responsible for the other person sinning. The other person has to take responsibility for his own sin. However, there's still a responsibility not to lead a person down the wrong path. We just have to know how it logically plays out, that we are responsible not to lead a person astray. That we still have to see. Topic number 3. It is an obligation on every person to save another person from bodily or life-threatening damage. If one sees another person walking in a dangerous area, he must alert the other person, and if one sees another person drowning, he must attempt to save him in any way that he is able. This can be logically deduced from the law that permits one to kill a pursuer, which shows that it is a moral responsibility and therefore one which applies to Gentiles as well. This is also implied from the tractate Sanhedrin 72b, where it is explained based on the verse in Genesis 9:6, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, that one is obligated to save the victim by taking the life of the pursuer. This obligation is included in the Noahide prohibition of murder. This logic can be found in Kasti, David, Tosafot of Kurbanot, chapter 13, that it is a positive obligation deduced from the negative commandment that prohibits murder. Okay, because we have an allowance to kill a pursuer, that shows that we have the ability. We have there's a level of responsibility that would even go to the point of killing another person if that other person is the pursuer. So it overrides the prohibition against murder. Therefore, we have a responsibility that overrides the prohibition of murder. That's a pretty strong responsibility then that we have. And that is the basis for the responsibility that we have to help other people make sure that they go on the straight and on the correct path and not in a dangerous path. The obligation is only the obligation is only to expend effort, but a Gentile is not obligated to spend money to save another person if he will not be reimbursed. Shokan Orach Harav, Laws of Bodily Damage, Topic 8. Rabbi Zalman Nechemia Goldberg notes that it appears that the obligation to expend effort to help another person falls under the obligation of returning a lost object, in which Gentiles are not obligated. As explained in Tractate Sanhedrin 73a and Shokan Orach Harav. So we're not required to return lost property, and likewise we would not be required to expend our own money to prevent another person from going down the wrong path. The author responds that although it is true that this obligation and that of saving another person's life are the two sources in this area regarding Jews, then they are not, and they are both not binding for Gentiles. They are still obligations within the prohibition of murder or from pure logic. So the basis for possibly needing there's a possibility still that there's an obligation to expend money to help a person. And this would be not under the reasoning of the Jewish commandments would require expending money to help a person in a dangerous situation. For Gentiles, it would be in an area of it would be obligated because of logic. It's just simply it makes sense for a functioning society that people will expend money to help another person when it makes logical sense to do so. Whereas the Jewish case, it doesn't have to make logical sense in a specific case. In a Gentile sense, it would have to make logical sense to do so for the specific case. Therefore, there would be a requirement to the extent that it's logical to do so. However, one is obligated to spend money to save another person with the assumption that it will be paid back, and it is obvious that the one can use the victim's own money to save him. So if we expend money, there's sort of it's sort of we're giving the guy credit at that point. We're extending credit to the person at that point. We're not expending our own money. We're sort of using our money with the assumption that it'll be paid back. And definitely we would be allowed to use the other person's money in order to help him in a difficult situation. And how that would actually play out, we would have to see if is it possible what exactly are we considering areas that we are required to intervene, and would we be allowed to just take his money and spend it in such a way to prevent him from putting himself in harm's way, if that's his intention, is to put himself in harm's way. But this is the area of informing the person, trying to lead him down the right path, not forcing him to be in the right path, but instructing him, giving him instructions is what we're looking to do. One is not obligated to put himself in mortal danger to save another person. Shokan or Karav, Laws of Bodily Damage, Topic 8. Rabbi Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg notes that it appears that the obligation to expend effort to help another person falls under the category of returning a lost object, which Gentiles are not I apologize. Footnote 225. Shokan or Karav, Laws of Bodily Damage, Topic 7. So the person would not, it would not fit logically to put oneself in danger in order to help another person get out of danger. Now, would a person be allowed to do that? That's not being addressed here right now, but it's saying we're not, there will be no logical obligation. But oneself in danger, then two people are in danger. There will be no logical obligation to do so. Topic number 4. A doctor is obligated to heal his patients to the best of his capacity, whether they're gravely ill or having a minor health problem, and is permitted to charge for the money and time spent on treatments and for this expense. The doctor who holds back treatments for reasons other than the lack of reimbursement is an evil person. If the sick person dies because of the withholding of treatment, this is morally equivalent to murder by the standards of God and mankind. However, the doctor's lack of action should not be judged in a court as a criminal crime. So the doctor is not, or the Shokan or Karav, Shokanor Uridea, chapter 336. It appears clear, based on moral logic, and possibly due to the positive aspect of the prohibition of murder, which is the obligation to save another person's life, that if there is no significant loss to the doctor and the patient has no money to pay, the doctor must save the patient's life, and likewise, and otherwise, this constitutes the sin of murder. So there's an obligation that if a person has special technical ability to help a person, and they refuse to do so, unless it's in the case of where there's the person is not there is a expectation that people are going to do what they're able to help out with. Doctors would have extra capacity to help a person out who is in mortal danger. Another person might have another ability to help out. I mean, somebody is if someone is drowning in the ocean and a person has a rowboat, that person has an obligation because he has a special situation. He can intervene and help the person who has a rowboat. The doctor who can't swim, is not going to be expected to jump in at that point. It wouldn't make any sense. However, once the person's on shore, now the doctor has the ability. The person in the rowboat may not know any medicine. The doctor now can help at that point. So it's whatever speciality the person has in the situation to help. There's an expectation that the person will do what they can. There's a moral obligation to do so. If they don't, it does not necessarily become a criminal thing because the person did not actively it would not be a criminal case because the person did not actively do anything to harm the other person. But it would definitely be a moral case concerning the person, and it would be judged by the hand of heaven. And possibly if there's government obligations on certain people. I mean, if a person has a license to operate a rowboat, it might be assumed that he will help somebody if they're drowning. And therefore, because he has the license, there might be a societal contract associated with that there might be civil issues involved. And likewise with the doctor who has a license to practice medicine, there might be a societal contract that would change from different societies, would have a different way of looking at it. But normally it would be considered there's a responsibility for the doctor to do what he can when cases like this come up. And it would be the sin of murder. It would not necessarily be the criminal liability in a court of law, but it would still be the sin of murder, and the doctor would have to address that with however the society sets up and the court of heaven. Thank you.